Hey everyone, welcome to StrataEdge Insights. I'm your host, Brian Ratté, over here at StrataEdge, and today we're diving into the high-stakes world of AI strategy with two industry powerhouses. First, Vlad Lukic of Boston Consulting Group. Vlad is Managing Director and Senior Partner and leads a global practice for tech and AI projects at scale. Vlad is joined by Linda Apsley. Linda is the founder of StrataEdge and also a senior advisor to BCG. Drawing from BCG's eye-opening study of 1,500 global companies where only 5% are truly AI ready and outperforming their peers, we'll explore 6 critical questions every CEO must ask before launching any AI project. From targeting real P&L impact and deciding build versus buy, to ensuring data readiness, governance, kill criteria, and to gain a competitive advantage. This conversation reveals how to avoid pitfalls and drive massive value. Stick around, you won't want to miss these game-changing insights, and as always, you can find important links and downloads in the show notes. Thanks again for checking us out. We welcome your comments and feedback. And now I hope you enjoy this discussion between Linda and Vlad.
So I know, Vlad, that you work with a lot of very senior executives in large companies about AI. And I also know that you recently did a study on AI. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that study and what you found and how you think it impacts the industry.
Yeah. So listen, great to have a conversation, and like few interesting things that came out of the study. First of all, it was with 1,500 companies of range in sizes from billion to over 100 billion and everything in between. Um, and we were really trying to get a sense for their AI readiness, right? And so a few interesting stats that came out of it are um, only 5% of the companies are AI ready, both how they're self-assessed and based on what we are assessing they have in their toolkit in terms of operating model, data readiness, tech stack that can support them, etc. And for those that are in that bucket, they are outperforming all of the peers, and the gap is just widening dramatically. So that's kind of one big thing. And then of the other interesting observations, one is that those leaders do fewer things, but they stick longer with them. They invest longer because they know where the value is. They focus on the core workflows because that's usually where the dollars and competitive edge is. And then the last point is they really think hard and invest a lot of time and resources to reshape processes and change the operating models and make sure the right incentives are in place. So kind of the change management part of it is where they double down.
Yeah. Well, I think that leads us really nicely into the first question we want to address. If the one group is really succeeding, we would want to be able to arm the rest of the leaders with questions they can ask to help themselves get into that group. And that's really the purpose of these questions. So the first one is, what's the specific P&L impact we're targeting, and could we achieve 80% of it without AI? This is a really interesting question because I know I find in my work that sometimes people have an idea and they just run with that idea and they don't really think through the deeper implications of whether that AI solution is going to provide value for them. So what is your recommendation for leaders on how to spot whether they're going to get high value out of a project?
Yeah, listen, I would say this goes to the basic business skills, right? You focus on where the value is and articulate it. And too many leaders follow the shiny object of we'll just deploy AI and then magic will happen. It will not. You really need to be super clear on where the value is and then sweat that out. And to your point, um, any of the major AI initiatives need to be tied directly to the bottom line. And if they cannot articulate that, that's going to be a problem in itself. And the ones that do really well are ruthless in identifying those and then staying focused on those specific workflows where the value
Yeah.
is.
An interesting story you might enjoy, but when I was at Geico, we sometimes had the opportunity of working with Charlie Munger, and he's well known for his isms, is maybe the right word. But one question he would always ask us is, would it really be cheaper to do this with tech or to just have people do it? And when he first said that, I thought, that's a really important question because we don't often ask that. And maybe not very often, but sometimes it is true. It's just, you aren't going to gain anything by putting the tech in place.
Yes, I just started reading his book, and it's full of a lot of wise advice. So don't shy away from asking those basic questions would be one big takeaway.
Yes, absolutely. So the next one is, are we buying or building, and do we understand why that matters? So I think when I was in my role as CTO, there were times people would bring something to me to purchase, and I would look at the solution, many times an AI solution, and I realized that we could do it with 2 engineers in 2 weeks, and yet the price tag on it was $1 million. And so that was really, for me as an engineering leader, an important question. But I'd like to know, how do you think about that? How do you think companies should evaluate build versus buy in the AI world?
Yeah, listen, it has shifted now a lot because of the speed at which some of the solutions are becoming available, right? Which changes the dynamics also of what you can build versus what you can get off the shelf, right? So there's a new time component to it all. But that aside, still it remains, if something will give you a competitive edge and nothing on the market exists, you should probably build and invest the time because it will tie to the 80% impact on the P&L, and it will uh, be clear about that. On the flip side, when you buy, and if it's easily accessible in the market, your competitors have the same access to it. So if there are some things that everybody has access to it and it's kind of commoditized and it's at the price point that is accessible, right? Buy it, don't build it, right? No one should build Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel. You should not build your own spreadsheet solution, right? That is cloud native, that or whatever your choice is, right? There is a lot of other options in that space available. So don't build those solutions that are accessible and are table stakes in the industry. But if something will give you a competitive advantage, um, and you see a line of sight to building it in a reasonable way, then you should totally lean it. That's at a macro level, but I hope that makes sense at that
It
level.
does, but I think that leads into the next question, which is, do they have the data infrastructure and governance to support it? And do they have the right skills? I know we had a client recently that I was talking to had tried 4 different companies to build a complex solution before they found one that really knew how to do it and that had the data readily accessible. So the building blocks are equally important. So have you had experience with that where they,
Yes. And I would
yeah,
say both ends of the vendors that would support you, but also internally. Some of the things, if you don't have the data infrastructure and are not ready to take on, you're not ready to take on, right? I had a client that said they had 3 years or they had like 10 years of historical data and for predictive analytics work we were going to do. So we started working and we realized, how they were saving the data was missing seconds. And when you miss the seconds in that particular piece of machinery and now it's in minutes, all the data is one big blob. So they didn't have 10 years of data, they had 0 years of data. And so now they actually need to start collecting the data. But that reframed the problem statement from doing fancy analytics on it to actually starting to collect the data so they can start building a foundation to start doing it down the line. So having an honest conversation around your data readiness, infrastructure readiness, and then do you have people that can do it in-house or do you need to use a third party becomes a skill in itself that each company needs to assess
yeah.
themselves.
I definitely agree with all that. And I think there's also a governance piece to it. If you're building models, you have to be sure that you can explain the model and that you're following proper procedures so that people can trust the outcomes. I heard of an insurance company not too long ago who would build an AI model, didn't quite test it enough. And unfortunately, they send out letters. They thought they had their high value customers and the low value customers. And quite a few people who had credit scores over 750 and were successful professionals received letters that they were no longer insurable. That kind of error with AI can happen easily because you're talking about large data sets and yet can be catastrophic. So the governance, I think, is equally important.
Yes, I would say governance and like you in the example that you shared, like people should not use LLMs to do deterministic analysis. That is something that you have other tools to do that. This can help you draft notes, etc. But a lot of folks don't know the difference, right? And they just use the tools for the wrong thing. So governance matters. What matters is also understanding limitations of different techniques and tools that you have. And then three, like within that governance, you need to figure out what is the testing that you're doing, right? At what sample sizes, etc. Even if you use one model and you figure out a workflow, but then the underlying model gets upgraded, the new version of it is creating new outcomes. So you need to relook at all of it. So that constant testing needs to be part of that governance as
As
well.
well as the change management. Yeah, very good. Okay, so do you see companies who are really willing to kill projects when they're not showing the value? Like, how the question behind this is, how will we know if this is working or failing within 90 days, and what's our kill criteria?
Yeah, and I see companies killing them too soon and killing them too late, if that makes sense, right? I many times they uh get mesmerized that something is working really well, um and but it doesn't deliver any outcome. But the pilots are working and the technical features are there, but it was always focused on something that was not a bottleneck, and they keep alive with it and pouring resources in it, and they're surprised there is no outcome later. Where when this thing is working well, like, it was never a bottleneck, so you just saved a problem that was never a problem, and few folks now have a little bit more time. Like, those should not have been put out of the gate in action anyways. But even then they prolong too long, and they suck up too much of the managerial bandwidth. On the flip side, there is more examples where they kill pilots or prototypes too soon when um, they solve a technical piece, but they don't see the impact, but they don't sweat the rest of it, changing the incentives, changes the workflows, etc. Because usually they have IT team driving it, and they don't have the license to change incentives of the salespeople or the people on the manufacturing shop floor. So they just say, well, these silly people are not using the tool we gave them. And then they kill a pilot or a prototype because, like, it's not working. When in reality, if you just sweated it a little bit longer and engage the right stakeholders and change the incentives and reshape the workflow, suddenly you're unlocking all this value. And so sometimes executives kill those efforts too soon, because they're saying it's not working, but they don't look at it as a system and then change all the different components around it. So I'm seeing both of those things, and just discipline and constant kind of evaluation and asking the right question is what's the key muscle to be
Yeah,
built.
I think one of the problems that the way I've described one of the problems is the tech team will sometimes build it and throw it over the wall. Might have been
Mhm.
able to do that with some technology, but with AI, that business process, as you've mentioned, is so tightly tied that you need to be working together with the business so that you don't end up with these IT projects that sound cool but don't have value.
Correct. Yes.
So last one, and this is a little bit where we started, and you had mentioned this, is will we gain strategic advantage over our competitors if we implement this solution? Or will we be at a disadvantage if we don't? I think as fast as this industry is moving with AI all over the place, some company that comes up with a really clever idea, it may not look like it has a competitive advantage or disadvantage right now, but it could if they become a trailblazer, no one has thought of before. So this is an important ending one for me in our last questions is really thinking through that and putting your money where your value will be the greatest.
Exactly. Yes. And uh, that goes into the guts of just running a profitable business, right? And so being able to articulate what is that value proposition you're delivering, either as a product or as a service, and what makes you unique to the others. I'm not a banking guy, and I just spent like last few weeks, quite a bit of time with folks that are in the digital banking space, right? And I was just telling them how some amazing banks that have scaled up really quickly, and I'm surprised they're not taking over more, right? And they pointed me to one little fact, which is, listen, they're really good to get large volume of customers that deposit small amounts of money to use it just for payments, and as a result, they never become a primary banking um, bank for them, their platform, right? They just become something they use for payments. So as a result, they never end up with enough of dollars as assets that they could actually run as a proper bank. So they're actually struggling financially to survive because they didn't really change the behavior of the customers. The convenience is there, but they didn't convince them to get the rest of the money to manage all of their other banking needs because they don't have all of that rest of it in their portfolio. So it's wow, it's fascinating. So actually, the existing banks have a higher advantage if they could just add those features in. They could lock in the customers even more, and having those conversations and obsessing around what is the value, what makes you unique, etc., is where the effort should go. And if you cannot articulate it, you have a problem. But that becomes a true north, tying it to the first question on where you should spend the effort and where the differentiation is going to be.
Well, thank you, Vlad. That was a really great summary to end our conversation today. Thank you for coming by. I really appreciate your time.